You think you know who you are. But let me ask you something. If you stripped away every role you've been assigned, the achiever, the peacemaker, the strong one, the smart one, what would be left? Most people go their entire lives without ever meeting the person behind the performance. They succeed, they serve, they survive, but they never live. Because life doesn't begin when you get what you want. It begins when you finally find yourself. You learned early on how to be liked, how to please, how to avoid punishment, how to keep the peace. And little by little you built a self, a version of you that fit in. Carl Jung called it the persona, a social mask, a performance, a survival tool. But here's the problem. You got so good at the role, you started to believe it was real. You thought, I'm always calm, I'm the reliable one, I don't need much, I'm fine. But under the persona, you weren't fine at all. You felt it, that subtle emptiness, that quiet ache. You do everything right, you follow the rules, show up on time, succeed by the book. But something still doesn't fit. You tell yourself it's burnout, or you need a vacation, or maybe a new relationship. But deep down, you know, none of those things will touch what's really wrong. Because the problem isn't what you're doing. The problem is who you're doing it as. You've built a life for someone you're not. And now the real you is trapped in the attic, ignored, silenced, forgotten. Jung knew this well. He said the parts of ourselves we hide, deny, or suppress don't disappear. They become the shadow, the unlived life, the rejected self, the truth you were too afraid to be. You don't get to bury it and walk away because it shows up in other ways, in your jealousy, in your resentment, in your anxiety, your apathy, your rage, not because you're broken, but because your soul is banging on the walls, screaming to be seen. And if you don't listen, it will break everything around you just to be heard. Here's the trap. Your fake self works. It gets validation. It makes people comfortable. It wins awards. But it also costs you everything. Because every time you betray who you are to become who they want, you go a little more numb, until one day you wake up and realize you've built a life you feel nothing for. Your smile is real, but your joy is gone. You're exhausted, not because you're doing too much, but because you're being someone you're not. You've confused your personality with your identity, but they're not the same. Your personality is what you've developed to survive the world, but your identity, that's who you are before the world told you who to be. And that self, the one you buried under perfectionism, niceness, and control, isn't gone. It's waiting for you to stop performing, waiting for you to turn inward, waiting for you to remember, because your truth was never lost. It was just hidden beneath layers of who you thought you had to become. But if the mask isn't you, and the roles are all lies, then who are you? In the next part, we'll follow Jung down the path of individuation and uncover why meeting your true self might feel like a breakdown, but is actually a breakthrough. Carl Jung believed that your life's deepest calling isn't to succeed, it's to become whole. He called this process individuation. It's not self-improvement, not becoming better, not becoming someone else. It's becoming who you already are, beneath the conditioning, the ego, the noise. But this process isn't gentle. It doesn't feel like enlightenment. It feels like collapse. Because to individuate, you must destroy the false self you've clung to for survival. And the ego, it doesn't die quietly. You might call it a breakdown. Your motivation disappears. The old goals feel meaningless. You lose interest in the things that used to define you. Your relationships shift. People say you've changed. They're right, because something inside you is dying, and it's supposed to. This is the death of the performative self, the you who existed only to keep others comfortable, the you who sacrificed authenticity for acceptance. It feels like falling apart, but it's actually falling inward. You're not breaking, you're emerging. Jung didn't fear the shadow. He said it holds the very parts of you you've disowned: your anger, your ambition, your sexuality, your need for boundaries, your hunger to be seen. You were taught to hide those things, taught they were too much, bad or selfish. So you buried them, and then wondered why you felt small. But here's the truth. Your power lives in the places you've been told to reject. The parts of you you're most ashamed of are the same ones that will set you free, but only if you're brave enough to look at them. Society doesn't want whole people. It wants compliant people. People who fit the mold. People who never ask why. When you start to become whole, when you stop playing nice, stop agreeing to roles you never chose, the world will push back. They'll say you're selfish, too much, unstable, difficult, because your wholeness threatens the game. It exposes the lies others still live in. But don't let that scare you. Let it confirm that you're finally walking your own path. Here's the part no one tells you. Finding yourself is lonely, because when you step away from your old life, you step away from the people who liked that version of you, the ones who needed you to stay small, to be agreeable, to be predictable. You'll look around and realize that much of what you called connection was really just mutual role-playing. But that silence, that ache of solitude, it's the beginning of truth. You're finally making room for relationships that meet you, not your performance. But what happens after the collapse? When the masks are gone, when the roles don't fit, how do you build from what's left? In the next part, we'll explore how Jung's vision of the self offers not just healing, but the blueprint for a life you no longer need to escape from. At the core of Jung's work is one idea. There's a you beneath all the noise. Not the self you've curated, not the self you've performed, but the self with a capital S, your original undivided essence. It's the child who danced before shame, the mind that wondered before it learned fear, the voice that spoke truth before it was silenced. This self has never been broken. It's only been buried beneath trauma, beneath roles, beneath the lifelong game of pretending. Individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the forgetting. Your ego is loud. It wants validation, control, admiration, and safety. It panics when it's ignored or criticized. But your soul, it doesn't chase, it waits. It speaks in quiet impulses, a pull toward a certain path, a longing that doesn't go away, a whisper that says, "This is not you." The ego is a mask. The soul is your face beneath it. And the more you live from the ego, the more exhausted you become, because deep down you know you're betraying something sacred. People say, find yourself like it's a joyful thing, but they don't warn you about what you'll have to lose. You'll lose the fake friendships built on shared illusions. You'll lose your desire to compete once you realize there's nothing to prove. You'll lose your taste for gossip, for small talk, for noise. You'll lose the identity you worked so hard to build, only to realize it was a prison all along. And in that emptiness, you'll meet the part of you that doesn't need to prove anything, because it already is. What you repress doesn't die. It waits. And when you're finally quiet enough, it knocks. Maybe in the form of a dream, a craving, a memory, a breakdown. That's not dysfunction. That's the soul coming home. Jung saw the unconscious not as a dark pit, but as a treasure chest. And to access it, you don't run away from discomfort. You turn toward it. You listen. You integrate. The parts of you that were shamed, they are not your weakness. They are the doorway back to wholeness. Individuation doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming complete. You'll still have flaws, still mess up, still get scared. But now, you know who you are beneath all that. You stop needing the world to clap for you. You stop chasing people who don't see you. You stop trying to fix the parts of you that were never broken, only misunderstood. You stop fighting with yourself, because now you see clearly. The war was never out there. It was always inside. And now you choose peace. So, what does peace actually look like? What does life feel like once you've stopped performing and started living? In the next part, we'll explore the signs that you've truly found yourself and why most people won't believe it's even possible. When you finally find yourself, something strange happens. You become quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer need to prove anything. You walk into rooms without needing to dominate them. You listen more than you speak. You no longer feel the pull to impress or compete. This isn't apathy, it's presence. You become calm in chaos, still in storms, grounded when others are frantic. Because when you're rooted in truth, the world's noise loses its grip on you. Once upon a time, you thought love would fix you. You searched for people who could complete you, validate you, reflect back the version of yourself you couldn't see. But when you've truly found yourself, you stop looking for mirrors. You begin to love from fullness, not need. You stop clinging, stop chasing, stop begging to be chosen. You no longer need someone to give your life meaning because you finally found it within, and that changes everything. You stop trying to explain yourself because you realize the people who truly see you don't need convincing, and the people who need convincing don't truly see you, so you walk away from debates. Let others mislabel you. Let them think what they will. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. You've stopped trading your truth for temporary approval, and in that surrender, you find something most people will never taste: freedom. When you were lost, you created from fear, from pressure, from competition, from a need to make something of yourself. But now, you create because it's who you are, not to get love, but to express it. You speak because truth moves through you. You build not to become important, but because you are already whole. Your work becomes art. Your life becomes prayer, because everything you do now flows from alignment. You don't preach, you don't convert, you don't fix people, but your presence does something strange. It makes others breathe deeper, question louder, feel more. Because when you show up as your true self, without armor, without agenda, you give others permission to do the same. You become a living invitation, not to be like you, but to be like themselves. And in a world full of noise, that kind of presence is sacred. But here's the paradox. The deeper you go into yourself, the more connected you become to everything else. Now, are you ready to go even deeper? In the final part, we'll uncover why finding your true self isn't the end of the road. It's the beginning of your real service to the world. You were trained to think that turning inward is narcissistic, that looking at your wounds is self-centered, that healing yourself is some kind of luxury. But Jung didn't see it that way. He said, individuation is the process by which a person becomes a psychological individual, that is, a separate, indivisible unity or whole. And when you become whole, you no longer need to use other people to complete you. That's not selfish, that's liberation. Think about it. Who does more harm, the person who knows themselves or the person who's unknowingly controlled by their shadows? Who is safer to love, the one who owns their darkness or the one who projects it onto everyone else? The world doesn't suffer because people are too self-aware. It suffers because people refuse to look in the mirror. When you break that cycle, you don't just free yourself. You stop being part of the problem. A whole person is dangerous, but not in the way the world fears. They're not aggressive, not manipulative, not arrogant. They're dangerous because they can't be controlled. They don't chase approval. They don't need to dominate. They don't respond to guilt, shame, or fear. You can't buy them, can't flatter them, can't scare them back into silence. Why? Because they know who they are, and someone who's met themselves fully cannot be owned by anyone else. That kind of presence shakes systems, and it also heals them. Once you spoke to be heard, to be admired, to be validated, You carefully crafted every word, not for honesty but for applause. But now you say less and mean more. You don't speak to perform. You speak to express. You don't post to impress. You share to serve, because the more you understand yourself, the less you need to be seen. And ironically, that's when people start to notice. Not because you're louder, but because you finally become real. We're taught that living fully means being constantly on, chasing, producing, talking, sharing, doing. But that's not aliveness. That's addiction to distraction. Real aliveness is quiet. It's presence without performance. It's joy without witnesses. It's meaning that doesn't need an audience. You start feeling life in moments you used to rush through. The smell of the rain, the curve of a shadow, the taste of silence. You stop needing the next big thing, because you're finally home in yourself, and nothing's missing. You can't take the mask with you. You can't bring the fake friendships, the forced smiles, the roles that numb you. Finding yourself demands a cost, the death of everything that's not real. It's not a tidy process. It's not romantic. You might lose your career, your image, even your place in the world. But what you gain can't be named. You don't just find truth, you become it. You don't just live, you burn. And in that fire, everything false turns to ash. You don't arrive one day and say, I found myself, I'm done. Because who you are isn't a final answer. It's an unfolding question. Some days you'll feel strong, others shattered. Some moments you'll radiate clarity, others you'll crawl back into old masks. But the difference is this: you notice, you return, you recommit to truth again and again and again. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you now understand. The most beautiful thing you can ever be is you, without distortion. When you live in alignment, you become a quiet mirror. You don't lecture, you don't force, but your life begins to say to others, it's possible. It's possible to be whole, to be honest, to walk through pain and come out freer. Your wholeness becomes a revolution, not through noise, but through presence. People feel safer around you, not because you save them, but because you invite them to stop pretending. And in a world addicted to performance, your authenticity is medicine. Not everyone wants this. Some would rather stay in the mask. It's familiar, it's praised, it hurts, but at least it's predictable. But if you've made it this far, you're not like most people. You've felt the tension, you've heard the knock on the door of your soul, and now you have a choice. You can go back to roles, back to pretending, or you can walk forward into the fire of self-discovery, into the ache of truth, into the freedom that only comes from finally saying, this is who I am. Let me ask you something bold. What is the mask you're most afraid to take off? And what part of your soul have you been keeping in the dark because you think the world couldn't handle it? Tell us in the comments. Let this be the moment you choose truth over comfort. And if this video helped you feel seen, give it a like so it can reach someone who's still hiding. For more bold, soul-cutting psychology like this, join our community of people walking toward the light. Subscribe and click the notification bell to never miss new insights. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.